Hi, I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. Okay, so today I am going to be doing the book recommendation tag. This was an original tag by Steph. I will link her in the description box below. And yeah, there are 15 questions about books that you love and would recommend. The first question is, a book you tell people is your favorite. My favorite is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is a coming-of-age story following Francie Nolan as she grows up in Brooklyn during the early 1900s. It is an amazing story, and I love it, and I have read it so many times that I think that this is definitely my favorite book. The next question is a book that is your guilty pleasure. I had to think about this for quite a while because I don't really feel guilty about reading. But when I really thought about, something that doesn't have great writing but still held my attention, I think of Party Monster by James St. James. This is actually a true life story about club kids in the 80s and 90s and the so-called king of the club kids, Michael Alec, who was arrested for murdering his drug dealer and fellow club kid. And it is written like the trashiest gossip column with all sorts of costumes and drugs and really weird situations the people really got into. So yeah, this is probably my guilty pleasure book. I did see the movie first. This is the movie tie-in edition. The book originally was called Disco Bloodbath. So, love the movie, love the book, awesome. The third question is a book everyone loved that I didn't. I'm gonna go with Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I got to about 40 or 50% of the way through the book, and I just didn't care. It probably didn't help that I already kind of knew the twist, but I just really didn't connect with the characters and didn't really see what all the fuss was about, honestly. A book you read the fastest. I read a book in one day, which I don't typically do. That was called Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble. This is a book about a young girl who thought she had been sick her whole life. She's in and out of hospitals, getting medications, getting different procedures. And what she finds out is her mom is poisoning her. Her mother has Munchausen by proxy syndrome, which means that she gets attention through hurting someone else. And they compliment her, "Oh, you're such a sweet, doting mother that you have to have this sick child and take her to all these appointments." And that was basically what she was wanting. So that was a real life story. And once she found out that her mother had been poisoning her, she hatches a plan for revenge. And that's where the two stories diverge. But I just had to know what was happening. I couldn't read it fast enough. I didn't see the twists coming. I loved it. It was awesome. The fifth question, a book that deserves more hype. And I want to say Cottonmouths by Kelly J. Ford deserves more hype. This is about a young woman, Emily, who drops out of college and goes back to her small town in Arkansas. She reconnects with old friends and even forms a relationship with a girl she used to have a crush on. But she gets mixed up in some dangerous stuff, and this book was really tense. I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was really well done, and I just can't believe more people haven't heard of this. This is such a great book. A book that is becoming a movie or TV show. This was difficult because not very many things that I have read have been adapted. But I remembered that Good Omens is going to have a season 2 coming out in May, and I would definitely recommend Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. This is so funny, and I love these characters, and would definitely recommend. And if you haven't seen the show yet on Amazon, You should check it out because it's fabulous. A book that you have reread the most. Well, if I was going to be boring, I would say A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I have probably read it at least 12 to 15 times. But the two other books that I have reread the most, I have The Blood for Flowers by Anita Emirazvani. And this was set in the 1500s about this Persian rug weaver. And this is an amazing and beautifully intricate historical fiction. And I have read it at least 5 or 6 times. One of my favorites. And then the other one that I've read about 5 or 6 times is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. This is his memoir, growing up really poor in Ireland. The striking poverty is just, it's flabbergasting. And I remember I first read this in high school, and it just made a huge impact on me. So I've reread this several times as well and would recommend. A book from a genre you don't typically read. So I don't typically read romance, but was excited because Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I heard that it had chronic illness rep, and it does. I found myself really, really enjoying not only that book, but the other two in that kind of companion series. Take a Hint, Danny Brown, and Act Your Age, Eve Brown. The 3 sisters each get a book. I would definitely recommend those, but warning, they are quite steamy. So if sex scenes make you uncomfortable, I wouldn't recommend it. The next question, a book that deserves all the hype it gets. I'm going to say Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This was my absolute favorite book 2 years ago, and I have reread it, I think 3 times now. That's how much I love it. It has such a great character that I just loved. And I like the humor. It's kind of like lame dad type humor, but I enjoyed it. And there's just so much going on. And if you read it, I highly recommend the audiobook because it definitely adds something special to this specific story. Number 10 is a book you usually recommend when you're asked to give a recommendation. I don't do blanket recommendations. I have to kind of know what you're in the mood for and what types of stuff you like. But 2 books that I love and have been pushing into more hands. The first is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Chizumura. This is a wonderful, cozy fantasy about these Japanese children who find that their mirror is glowing, and they are able to step through their mirror and go to this castle with these other kids. And each of the kids is struggling with something, and together, through their friendships, they're able to overcome a lot of their challenges. I absolutely love the ending. This is a book I would definitely say, if it's slow and you're not that interested yet, give it more time, because that last third is incredibly fast-paced and makes all of the build-up worth it. The other book I have been recommending quite a lot is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is now on the Women's Prize for Fiction for the long list. It's on a bunch of other best-selling lists. I don't think it needs more hype, but I do think it deserves the hype it gets, and it is awesome. So I've been putting this into people's hands as well. It's a character-focused story about a young man growing up in foster care and dealing with the opioid crisis that was going on. And this is also a David Copperfield retelling, although I think you don't need to read it. You don't need to read David Copperfield to get this story. It definitely stands on its own. Number 11, a book that has your favorite character or characters. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and I think it has some of the best character work out of all of the stories I've read. This is a mixed crew, a space crew that has aliens and people and others. It's a found family, and they are on a long haul journey, and it's just, I can't even narrow down which is my favorite character. I love all of them so much. A book you wish you could live in. I would love to live in the cozy fantasy world of Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It just has kind of a slow pace, and people just kind of do what they're interested in, and this one is interested in opening a coffee shop. And I just thought, that sounds like a relatively safe and happy place to be. So I think that's what I'd pick. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. So I don't think I've ever read a book I think I'm gonna hate, but I did initially DNF Endurance. I read like the first chapter and it just wasn't hooked by it. This is a nonfiction book that was written in the 1950s, and in the beginning it's a tiny little bit dry. It was not capturing my attention, so I had put it down for a while. But then I decided to pick it back up, and I'm so glad I did. This was really good, and it's just as fast-paced as a novel. This is the true life story of Ernest Shackleton and his journey to Antarctica, and what happens after his ship gets frozen and is sunk in Antarctica. And it is just so fast-paced. There's so many twists. Like, I couldn't tell that this was a nonfiction book by its pacing, at least. And I thought that this was amazing. Question 14, a book that made you cry. I could have picked a lot of books, but I absolutely loved Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and this made me cry. It says right on the back that somebody's going to die. I knew who was going to die. I was familiar enough with the story. This is focusing on Hamnet and Judith. These are Shakespeare's children. And then also it focuses on his wife, Agnes. And you don't have to know anything about Shakespeare to enjoy this. I knew he was going to die. I knew. But when it happened, I was bawling my eyes out. Yeah, it's not a spoiler. Like, it's the premise of the book. Absolute buckets of tears. And the last question is, a book you wish you could read again for the first time was Confessions by Kane Minato. This is a translated thriller set in Japan, following a school teacher who threatens to get back at her middle grade students for causing the death of her 4-year-old daughter. That is all I'm going to say. There were so many twists and turns. I wish I could kind of just erase them and experience them again, because it was so fast-paced and very enjoyable, and also really dark and messed up. So yeah, that would be one I'd like to read again. Those are the 15 questions of books I would recommend. I'm going to tag some people down below. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing anybody else's answers. If you want to answer down in the comments below, I'd love to hear your answers. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.